Essentially, the East India Company first emerges as a commercial set of arrangements. Queen Elizabeth I says that, Britain has exclusive trading rights with India. And so it starts out as just a trade operation, but slowly over time, it begins to develop into a governance operation. The East India Company starts collecting taxes from the Indian population. The East India Company hires private armies, and this enforces the tax collection. And this all culminates 77 years after the East India Company's founding in the East India Company beginning to mint currency for India on behalf of the British Crown. And then you've got a classic colonial structure. With big tech and AI, you have a similar dynamic to the East India Company, except everything is compressed into months rather than 77 years. The transformation in both the case of the East India Company and big tech involves three principal components. First, you've got to capture information systems. That's done through colonial rule and colonial contract in the instance of the East India Company. Today, we have algorithmic captures of the information systems that govern our daily lives. Second, you need to weaponize critical infrastructure so it serves your interest. With the East India Company, this involved private armies and minting currency and a colonial governance structure. With big tech, it involves having our allies be increasingly dependent on things that our American-based companies control. This is the age of technology and warfare. And so what has happened is that so much of what was typically a government's responsibility is now in the hand of private companies. And as long as the US government and the private companies agree on what's in the US national interest, there's not a problem. But if there's a disagreement, the private company always has the right to do what it thinks is in its interest rather than the interests of the United States. Just take Elon Musk's Starlink. Elon Musk today controls 62% of active satellites, which makes it extraordinarily important for communications in war. But he can also threaten to turn them off if he doesn't want, say, Ukraine to bomb Crimea or some other thing that he just doesn't approve of. So you're using it, but the final say always comes down to the company, and the company may rule against you. And you see this really interesting language too, with Elon Musk responding to the Polish Prime Minister on X, saying, "Be quiet, small man," which is the kind of demeaning language that we often see in colonial situations. And third, you need to somehow have monetary power. So for the case of the East India Company, the British Crown mints India's currency and thereby controls how much of it there is. You have a more complicated situation with cryptocurrency, where some companies would like to be the currency of choice. Donald Trump has his own agenda with cryptocurrency. And the most interesting thing is there's current legislation before the US Congress that would make it impossible for the United States, the Fed, to issue its own stablecoin. And that creates this very rickety structure for protecting the interests, financial interests of ordinary Americans. The United States is unique in that respect. Both Europe and China are quickly moving to develop their own digital currency. The United States has something different in mind. It wants cryptocurrency to be a private concern, not a public concern. It's crazy to allow for certain stable coins that the Trump family owns to be legitimate and to not allow there to be a digital dollar. And when things are completely private, the people have little say over how they're being manipulated by powerful forces.